Thanks for joining us today. This new, safer format is different but necessary given the times we face. Today's comments are about what I think embodies the very spirit of our province of Manitoba. And I want to say a special thank you to Manitobans to begin with, community partners around our province who are stepping up, helping Manitobans in time of need. Although the Forks Market is currently closed, staff from Zorba's Greek and Italian showed up to work to make and donate food for the frontline ER staff that are working in St. Boniface Hospital. I want to say thanks to you guys. Pat and Five Distillery started making hand sanitizer to help support the vulnerable folks in our society. And there are so many other examples around the length and breadth of Manitoba that just tell me and tell all of us that Manitobans are ready to do the right thing to protect each other and to help do their part and more. So I want to say to every Manitoban how proud I am of them for stepping up, for working together, for helping their neighbors, and taking every precaution necessary as well to keep themselves safe and to help each other overcome these uncertain times. Je veux que chaque Manitobain sache à quel point je suis fier d'être intervenu, de travailler ensemble, d'aider ses voisins et de prendre toutes les précautions nécessaires pour s'entraider et surmonter ce temps incertain. During this time, I would also like to applaud all our frontline workers, emergency personnel, teachers, small business owners, all Manitobans for continuing to do what they can to flatten the curve and to adjust to the needs of their clients and to assist us as we face these challenges together. Pendant cette période, nous aimerions féliciter tous les travailleurs de première ligne, les personnels d'urgence, les enseignantes, les propriétaires de petites entreprises et tous les Manitobains de continuer à faire ce qu'ils peuvent pour aplanir le curbe. Today, I am really pleased to announce that the Government of Manitoba has partnered with North Forge to create an online tool that will help Manitobans do what they do best, help each other in time of need. It's called Help Next Door MB, and this is a time to protect the vulnerable, to support our friends, our families, our communities, by picking up groceries, by shoveling walkways, by donating blood, by volunteering and looking after the children of those who continue to work on our front lines. We lead the country in charitable donations and volunteerism, and now above all, this is Manitobans' time to shine. This program is another way that we can help Manitobans stay connected and remain connected in the days and months ahead. Manitoba has been the home of hope for over 150 years and will continue to be the home of hope. Le Manitoba est le foyer d'espoir depuis 150 ans et nous continuerons d'être le foyer de l'espoir. We're in this together. Manitobans, we're going to beat this thing. Now, I'm pleased to say that Jaron Villel is here with us today. He's the Director of Technology and Transformation, and he's going to be walking us through our new program, Help Next Door MB. Before, Jaron, I let you speak, I wanted to say also a special thank you to some people who dropped everything to make this happen. Joelle Foster is the CEO of North Forge Technology Exchange. Christian Dandeneau is the co-founder of ID Fusion, Digital Transformation Architect. And Chris Johnson is the founder and CEO of Permission Click and the chair of the board for North Forge. And I want to say a special thank you to those three individuals. And now over to you, Jaron. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Premier. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jaron Villel. I'm the Director of Technology and Transformation for the Government of Manitoba. This online web app is a matching tool that connects those that want help with those that need help. It's truly a made in Manitoba solution, made by Manitobans for Manitobans. Let's take a closer look. This web app, download, no app store, it's device agnostic, and it's designed for mobile phones and tablets and works on a desktop as needed. This is the sort of thing that was being attempted by many wonderful Manitobans all across the province, whether it was Winkler or Winnipeg, using social media platforms and personal websites. We heard from the community at large that given the uptake of online scams and Manitobans were unsure of who and what to trust with helping. We wanted a trusted source that could showcase the good Manitoba could do. This tool is moderated and monitored by a group of volunteers led by Northforge, and some requests for help will have those helping pre-cleared via background checks, criminal background checks by the Department of Justice, and child abuse registry checks by the Department of Families. I think of people like Sheila Restall with her One Neighborhood project. There are heartwarming stories like that all across Manitoba of people trying to do the right thing. Sheila and many others can do a lot of good with tools like this. This tool only shares generic information, like the need for prescription pickup, example, in a neighborhood like Charleswood. Then, once the two individuals are matched, an email, text, or phone will be sent to both parties, connecting them privately with further specific details. It's that simple. The rest happens offline, human to human, following good social distancing protocols recommended by Chief Provincial Public Health Officer Dr. Brent Rusin. No need to create any cumbersome accounts. You can sign on with any of your major social media accounts or use your email. Thank you.
Thanks, Jaron. That's awesome. And thanks so much again to the whole team at Northforge for assisting us with this. We are helping Manitobans do what Manitobans do best and stand up for each other and help each other in times of need. And that's exactly what is our top priority as a government, the health and well-being of all Manitobans. So with that, I'll just go to questions and we'll take those as you like.
Thank you, Premier. It's time now for questions from the media. Each reporter is allowed a question and a follow-up. Then we'll move on to the next reporter. And if time permits, we'll try and get a second round in. Reporters, please introduce yourself before you ask your questions. First of all, though, we'd like to open it up to questions for Jaron Bilal. If you have questions specifically for the online tool, I'd like the reporters to ask them now. Any questions, please? Again, an open format for questions for Jaron. Go ahead. If there are no questions for Jaron, I will begin then with media members, beginning with Global Winnipeg.
This is Marnie Blunt with Global Winnipeg. This could be for Premier or for Jaron, but can you give us some specific examples of how this new online tool could be used?
Sure. Jaron, why don't you take it away? You mentioned a couple in your earlier comments, but take it away.
Thanks, Premier. So an example might be, we have many Manitobans, let's say an elderly person that lives in a rural town, and their primary caregivers are actually residents of a different province. And they know that they just want a health check-in of that loved one. And so they can actually use the app on behalf of that individual, sign up. They'll be matched with a volunteer. Depending on the type of service, they'll have a criminal background check or a child abuse registry check as needed. And then the match will happen, and the volunteer can go help and support another Manitoban. Very Manitoban in its very nature.
And my follow-up question is, in terms of reporting people who aren't abiding by the recommendations of the state of emergency, like if there's a large group of people gathering, can people use this online tool to report something like that, or is there something else coming in relation to that?
Well, I think it isn't in its infancy. It's in its infancy, I think it's fair to say. We're looking for ideas on other potential uses. That might be one of them. But in its infancy, we're talking about assisting vulnerable people in getting services that they need and help that they need. It could be a person living with a disability or recovering from an injury. It could be a vulnerable senior looking for help and getting groceries. Could be those types of activities. We're open to other suggestions. We were just brainstorming on some this morning, and that might be one as well. In the interim, I would suggest, as I did the other day, that as much as we've had tremendous cooperation from the small business sector in every way, shape, and form thus far, if you see someone that's starting to, as we've seen over the weekend in the national news, in other provinces, they're having some problems with people ignoring the 50-person limits or not doing the physical distancing they should. If that happens, then let other people know about it, and certainly we can work together on this as we are today, working on the initial availability of services for vulnerable people in our province.
Thank you. The next question is from CJOB.
Yes, Diana Foxall from 680 CJOB. So I'm just on this site now. Is it just a website for now, or are there plans to develop an actual app for different phones potentially in the future?
No, right now it's a web app, and our thought is that it will stay that way. We want it agnostic to device. We want no barriers of entry. We want people to use it cross-jurisdictional. And the web apps today are the way most companies are going. We think it's future-facing, and it allows things like geolocating, so you still get to use the benefits that are on board on a device via a web app.
Like he said.
Thank you.
Next up is CTV National.
Premier Pallister, we're hearing today that more provinces are shutting down non-essential services, essentially just pharmacies and grocery stores, and of course, frontline workers that are needed for transportation and healthcare. Is Manitoba considering this? What are the next steps here?
Well, we've had continuous dialogue at the political, at the bureaucratic level, and with input from not just healthcare officials, but other leading minds throughout the province on where we need to go, and trying, as Gretzky used to say, I don't go where the puck is, I go to where it's going to be. We're anticipatory in our actions today. We're trying to make sure that we do what we can to facilitate the needs of people going forward. We believe this should be treated as more a marathon than a sprint. We're trying to make sure that we have the services that are there for people when they need them. And if those people grow in number, then we must have even more services available. And government can't do it all itself. It needs to be Canadians pulling together as we can and as we must. So Manitoba has a reputation for leading in that respect, and we plan to continue. As far as other steps in terms of pulling back on numbers, additional closings, extending school closures, and all of those things, they're all under discussion, and we will always be focusing on getting the best possible input and advice and staying ahead of the curve to flatten it.
Thank you, Jill. Next up is CBC Radio Canada's Ezra Bello. If Ezra is not there, Winnipeg Sun, Josh.
I am here. I'm here. Ezra
I
Belot.
apologize. Go ahead, Ezra.
Hi, sir. My name is Ezra Belot from French CBC. The 1st of April is approaching. Many Manitobans, unfortunately, have lost their jobs. Will there be any kind of support for tenants who won't be able to afford their own rent this month?
This is a key concern. There are a number of other concerns as well that we're addressing in discussion and research today, and I think we'll have more to say on this and on several other issues in the not too distant future. Cash flow issues are very real. We are looking at a variety of mechanisms in partnership with lending institutions, banks, credit unions, case populaires, and so on. Discussions underway on that, also with respect to landlords as it comes to rents. And so there will be more to say on these issues as we move forward. The federal government has announced some basic income support for certain Canadians. We, of course, have existing programs in the form of unemployment insurance and social allowance payments to give a basic amount of cash flow, but there is no doubt going to be continued concern among Manitobans and all Canadians about how they address their ongoing expenses daily, weekly, monthly. And like all other provincial governments and the federal government, we are on this. There'll be a call later today among the premiers with the Prime Minister. This is certainly an issue that's going to be top of mind among a number of the premiers on the call.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ezra. Winnipeg Sun, Josh Aldrich.
Hi. I was staying on the whole financial issues out there for different industries. I wondered if you've heard about the cries from the taxi cab industry and whether or not there are plans to support them financially. We're hearing from them that they've seen an 80% drop in service.
Josh, I think that there's going to be little doubt that almost every single industry in Manitoba and across Canada is going to see consequences as a result of this historic pandemic. We're in dialogue on a minute-by-minute basis in some cases on issues pertaining to how we can assist. And we have to bear in mind not just today's concerns, but also how are we going to come out of this. I was very, very pleased to see the Bank of Montreal's commentaries come out late Friday on each of the provinces saying that Manitoba, with our diverse economy, our foresight in terms of a built-up rainy day fund and our lower taxes, is better positioned than most provinces to deal with this storm and to move into the recovery period, the reignition, if you will, of our economy. So it's not just about day-to-day for us, it's also about having an eye on the future and where we can make progress in terms of coming out even more resilient than we have been in the past.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Next up, CTV Winnipeg, Jeff Keel.
Hi, Mr. Premier. Back to some questions that Marnie was asking you. First of all, for monitoring these businesses, for this 50 people rule or under, who actually enforces that? Is it health inspectors? And other than public shaming people on social media, who do I report this to if I see 100 people sitting inside a bar?
Yeah, well, it's a fair question because it's a brand new thing. Jeff, I'd say that we're evolving as we speak in terms of mechanisms. And as I said the other day, as much as we're doing that, I'm counting on you and Manitobans to make sure that these things are highlighted as immediately as possible. The consequences to a small business of me sending out a police inspector are less than the consequences of you telling all your friends about that small business violating a policy. But I want to emphasize again that I have tremendous respect for our small business community. They've been stepping up. They've been doing more than was required of them in almost all cases. And I am still not aware of a violation of any kind having been reported through any of the political or governmental agencies that are out there that you could contact. So as far as a specific point, that's something we've been discussing earlier today. And we'll endeavor to have more to say on that as early as tomorrow or the day after at the latest.
Follow up, Jeff? Okay, next in line is CBC's Bartley Kivas.
Mr. Premier, how is Manitoba going to engage in flood mitigation and response when people can't fill sandbags next to each other, can't build sandbag dikes next to each other, and you may have flood evacuees in the flood zone in the Red River main stem?
Yeah, it's a tremendously important question, Bartley. Despite optimistic forecasting, I'm a farm boy, so I care about what actually happens more than what's projected. And we are very concerned about that. I've asked those exact questions, and we're anticipating some response because clearly on the issue of physical distancing, I've done lots of sandbagging in my life, and it's impossible to do sandbagging and physical distancing at the same time. So that's a question I've asked, and I haven't got an answer for it yet. When I do, you'll be the first to get that answer. I do think, though, that it's important for Manitobans to understand with the stress levels that many Manitobans are having right now, that our projections are very good. We're never, ever going to take it for granted. Mother Nature can throw a curveball at us, as it has in the past and will in the future. But we are optimistic and hopeful that based on the projections, our flood likelihood is greatly reduced from what we might have thought some weeks ago. So that being said, the issues around community volunteerism, I expect that this particular service we're launching today, if need be, may be well adapted to helping us find volunteers to do work in the flood zone if need be in the not too distant future. We hope it isn't necessary, but we're setting up a model here today that could be very practical in helping us to address some of the concerns you just raised with your question.
And just as a follow-up, we have very low hotel use right now. Would you be looking at a dual whammy of putting people in hotels rather than large gathering centers in the event that a couple hundred people have to leave rural areas in the flood zone?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. We've had we've had some discussion on that as well this morning, not just solely for flood, Bartley, but for other purposes as well, potentially where there's over excessive demand. Let's put it that way. And so our hotel industry is, like many industries, is feeling the pain right now, and they have valuable service to offer that may have to be adjusted somewhat to comply with our physical distancing requirements in some aspects, but it is something that's certainly on the radar, and the resources that we have in Manitoba are many. We want to make sure we make maximum use of them to address the health and well-being of all of us.
Thank you. Up next, Winnipeg Free Press, Larry Cush.
Premier, the New Brunswick Premier Blaine Higgs says he wants the federal government to trigger the Emergencies Act, which effectively the old War Measures Act, to standardize emergency measures across the country. What do you think of that?
Well, I've raised the issue on previous calls, Larry, in the context of trying to get a somewhat more uniform and easier to communicate approach happening across the country. That being said, I recognize some of the premiers may not be as accepting of that, and we'll see as we have the call later today, we'll be able to ascertain where people are at on that. As far as the specifics around the War Measures Act, as you know, many provinces now have declared a state of emergency, as Manitoba has done. We have certain expanded powers, if need be, that we can bring to bear to address the situations within our province. I would have to get advice from those who are more expert in the legal aspects of what Premier Higgs is proposing before I'd be able to give you a comprehensive comment on the suggestion.
As a follow-up, when you're speaking with your fellow premiers and the Prime Minister today, what is your message to them? What do you expect from this meeting?
Well, again, ongoing coordination is important. We have had pretty good communication, but each of us are dealing with literally dozens upon dozens of issues, and wherever appropriate, I think it's wise to share comments with one another. On the issues of healthcare, I've said, and I don't wish to engage in a battle for resources at this point so much as to say our healthcare system across Canada needs to have a federal partner at a reasonable and sustainable level, and we need to have an understanding of how important it is to make sure that happens as a consequence of this pandemic, as it hasn't happened up till now. In addition, I have offered whatever additional resources or expertise we may have to any of the other provinces. I know that those offers have been reciprocated, and we'll see as things evolve whether there's a need for greater intra-provincial cooperation. But I do think that that is always something that we should be seizing advantage on. So again, the dialogue that's underway is intense. There are numerous issues. I wouldn't want anyone to think this was a sprint. It isn't. It's a marathon, and we're going to have to make sure that along the way we utilize every ally, every bit of energy we can find to face the challenges together.
Thank you. Steve Lambert of the Canadian Press, please.
Premier, just to follow up on Larry's question, what specifically are you looking for from the federal government? I mean, you've already declared some emergency measures. It doesn't go quite as far as other provinces. What specifically are you asking from the federal government?
Well, the federal government came out with a plan last week Steve, there are a number of questions that emanate from their proposal. We're getting some detail on some aspects of the plan, and we're looking for more detail on other aspects. That's part of, I think, the purpose of the call, just to clarify what resources the federal government will make available and on what basis and how soon and so on. I think another issue that's certainly going to emerge, perhaps a little less so in Manitoba than in some areas because of us being off the mark a little more quickly, is the issue of procurement and the challenge supply chain challenges that may interfere with our ability to purchase the things we need when we need them. That may be more, as I say, maybe more relevant in a couple of the other provinces I've talked to than here right now. But that being said, we all need to be aware that we're in this together, and supplies unavailable in any part of the country is bad news for all of us.
And as follow-up, why haven't you gone as far as some other provinces in terms of shutting down non-essential stores, restricting crowds to a much smaller size of 5 people, something like that? Why, if we're going to bend the curve and get out ahead of it, why not take that extra proactive step?
Well, we have taken, there are numerous measures one can take, and our province has taken numerous measures outside of the categories you just cited that were proactive, that put us ahead of other provinces. And not to be cocky at all, because this is a marathon, I keep saying that, but we are reaping the benefits of the early educational initiatives that we took. We have the benefit of a concentrated media, and that is something other provinces don't have. Our media has done a great job in getting messages out, proactive messages about social distancing, about preventative measures, about coughing properly and appropriately. Things like this matter. So I think that's also been really helpful. So as a province, and I don't like using case numbers because they're just a today thing, they can change. But the work we do now and the work we've undertaken previously is starting to show that we're effectively getting a handle on the number of new cases. That's good, but we have to do more. And in saying that, I wouldn't want anyone to misinterpret that I'm suggesting we're out of the woods. That's not at all what I mean. But I do mean that ongoing cooperation and strategies appropriate to each jurisdiction do make sense. One could argue that our measures thus far have been more than adequate based on case numbers. I'm not saying that today. I'm saying we're going to take the appropriate actions at the appropriate time to proactively make sure that services are available, but most importantly, that our health care is protected, that the health and well-being of Manitobans is protected.
We have 2 more reporters in the queue. True May from Brandon, you're first, please.
Yes, thank you. We've been hearing stories for the past little while about Manitobans stranded abroad in foreign countries. Is the province doing anything to help these people get home, or can the province take any action here on getting them back to Manitoba?
No, I think we're really counting on the federal government to do what they can in this respect. I just read a report, one of your outlets covered about 100 people plus in Morocco. These are issues best handled by the federal government. We certainly are sympathetic to the plight of Canadians who are abroad right now. But the fact remains that it's best coordinated through federal government and through the various ambassadorial postings abroad, the various international agencies that are there for the federal government. A couple of provinces do have offices, but really that's a federal government coordination challenge that's best handled by them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our final reporter is from City TV. Go ahead.
Hey guys, Jonas Gilbert, City News. Mr. Premier, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau very forceful in his message to Canadians this morning saying, go home, stay home. If, for example, Winnipeggers or people in Manitoba are in an office building hearing this message this morning, or they have loved ones in an office building hearing this message this morning, how would they parse that message as opposed to what's in action here in Manitoba?
It's an extremely difficult and dynamic time. It's without precedent, certainly apart from wartime, I would say, in Canadian history. Comments will be parsed. I would go with this. The World Health Organization has put out a statement basically saying, try to do everything you can to prevent and worry about the consequences later. And I think that that's probably where the sympathies of a lot of Canadians are right now. Let's do the best we can to protect each other, to protect ourselves, and you know, we are not at all inattentive to the reality in this country that we have an economy that supports our social fabric, that we need to have people working, that we need to have tax revenues and derived tax revenues to support our social services. We all understand that. But right now, we have to stay singularly focused on making sure that we flatten this curve. And if we do that together now, and we do the hard work and heavy lifting now, then we have an opportunity to win. And the longer term will be well served by that. And we'll be rejuvenating our economy here as best we can. Manitoba is well positioned to come out of this. But we have to stay focused on the principal job right now, and that is keeping our people safe and healthy.
And just a quick follow-up, if I can, Mr. Premier. I guess, so right now you're saying to folks that are in office buildings that may have, 50-plus people that they're okay right now. It is safe.
I'm suggesting that we're following the best advice we can get from people who are respected, actually not just here in Manitoba in the healthcare field, but nationally and in fact globally. And they're giving us advice and we're acting on it. But I'm not suggesting that advice won't change based on dynamic circumstances, because we all understand that situations have changed and they very likely will continue to change. And so we have to be nimble, we have to be agile, but we have to be cooperative, and we have to respect the experience and expertise of the people we're working with too. We're doing all those things. And I'd say to Manitobans again, thank you so much. Thanks to Jaron for being here with me today. Thank you to the folks at North Forge for helping us get this project off the ground so quickly. We are resilient, we're ready. We're going to do what it takes to make sure that Manitobans are as safe and secure through this crisis as we can make them. And we're going to be attentive to what's ahead at the same time, because we can beat this together, but only if we work together, and we will come out stronger if we work together. So we always have in Manitoba, we always will. And again, I want to say thank you to everybody for their cooperation and support through this very, very critical time. This is the time for Manitoba to shine. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Karen.